To handle a harsh winter, you need a large fireplace. Today, I'll share how the house survived an unusual minus 34 degrees here, along with a few useful tips. Regarding the minus 34 degrees, I wasn't home then. I was traveling beyond the Arctic Circle. Ironically, I went there to warm up, since it was only minus 25 degrees. Driving back, my car showed temperatures as low as minus 36 degrees in some areas. At times, I needed to press the clutch, but the pedal wouldn't move. I had to put all my weight on the pedal just to press it down and shift gears. Stuff like that. I had never experienced anything like it before in my life. It was a really harsh, brutal frost. And I was really afraid there would be a flood in the house, because last winter there were issues with the windows, not exactly leaking, but there were drops like condensation, and by the door there was a waterfall, and that was only minus 20, not minus 34. I went to the city of Kirovsk to go snowboarding, and when I found out what the weather forecast was like back home in Leningrad Oblast, I was just shocked. I turn on the cameras. I have cameras around the house and inside the house. I check and, well, everything seems fine. The camera is working, so there's electricity and internet. I look and there don't seem to be any puddles in the house on the camera. The heating is working. The ventilation was turned off. I can control all of this remotely in my house. I did what I could, so now I'm resting and will handle things when I return. I can't help from here if anything happens. Well, thank God for that. My wife and I came home. The temperature inside the house had dropped to 16 degrees because I hadn't anticipated such a weather forecast, and the temperature of the heated floors, which heat the house, had been set lower than usual. Also, the convector that I used to heat the room during cold spells was turned off as well, so the temperature in the house dropped, and it was cold to sleep. We arrived at night and I turned everything back on. I could have turned on the boiler 2 hours earlier at the last gas station while refueling. Instead, I turned it on so we had hot water when we arrived. But as it turned out, that doesn't work with the heating. Because last year I recorded a video answering the question what would happen if the electricity went out. Since my house is heated only by electricity, there are no other sources of heating. And I simulated a power outage, and it turned out that the house has a huge thermal inertia. It really retains heat well, because it turned out to be not exactly airtight, but a good house that can easily maintain a comfortable temperature for a whole day without any problems. And after that, well, you'll need to start dressing warmer. Listen, it's very obvious that I'm wearing 6 sweaters. And this thermal inertia works both ways. The house cools down slowly, but it's also hard to heat up. And it took 2 days to heat the house back up to those 23-24 degrees that I usually keep at home. When I got home, I was really surprised because everything was completely dry. Everything was turned off. The ventilation in the house was off, and despite that, everything was still as dry as possible. The thing is, even with the forced ventilation turned off, there's still a difference between the air intake and exhaust openings, and still some kind of pressure difference is created. And there is air circulation even with the ventilation turned off, and when no one is home, apparently that's enough. When people are in the house, this natural air exchange is not enough. That's why I have a forced supply and exhaust ventilation system installed. And when people appeared in the house, there were immediately 3 of us, because with us was also my brother. And basically the fun started when people appeared in the house. Before going to bed, I probably cranked up all the heating, did everything I could, and also turned on the humidifier, because it also adds a bit of warmth with its 100 watts or so. I didn't turn on the ventilation because I wanted the house to heat up faster and keep out the cold outside air, which was around minus 20 or 25 when we arrived. This was to keep the minus 20 or 25 outside and help the house heat up faster. In the morning I didn't notice right away what was happening. I also filled up a hot bath, filled some pots with hot water, the sink too, so it would help warm things up. Because overnight the temperature didn't reach a comfortable level. I was freezing and wanted to warm up as quickly as possible. And that's when a real waterfall started on the windows. Everything started running down the door really badly. After it stood there for a few hours, icicles even formed. Then I was smart enough to realize I needed to get rid of all that water and turn on the ventilation. But it turned out to be a very interesting experiment because later on I deliberately tested it in a controlled way by filling the bathtub and running water back and forth. There is an air quality monitor that allows me to track the humidity level in the room. I noticed that when we arrived, the humidity in the room was 21%. When the humidity rises to 30%, the windows start to fog up a little at the bottom. When the humidity gets closer to 40%, droplets start to appear on the windows. At that point, water also starts running down the door. When the humidity gets to 60 and above, there is a severe, just wild flood in the house. Everything leaks from every crack as much as possible. When you open the front door, steam pours out as if you're in a sauna. And I was able to track this very correlation between the percentage of humidity and what happens in the house during frosts. And when outside, like in the last couple of days, it was also around -20 to -27. The humidity in the house was up to 30% and everything in the house was dry. Even my cheapest windows, the thinnest window profiles, even they didn't fog up, and the same with the door, even the door stayed dry. And thanks to this experiment, it really stuck in my mind how humidity parameters work together with temperature and what comes out of it. I'll definitely keep this in mind for the future. I'm going to investigate this matter to the end. What I was most worried about was the communication. Because of my bad experience at my parents' previous house where the sewage system would freeze every winter, I was really afraid that my septic tank would freeze too. People asked me, Ilya, why isn't your sewer pipe buried deeper? And I always ask in return, well, why? What's the point of burying it deeper? What's going to freeze there? The air. There shouldn't be any standing water in the pipe, so nothing can freeze. But I don't have a properly made septic tank, so sometimes the outlet from the house gets a bit flooded. And right where the pipe goes into the first of the 3 chambers, sometimes the water level there is high, and I was really worried that it might freeze and block the water from leaving the house. But as it turns out, even at -34 degrees the well, when covered with a lid, doesn't freeze. That's the funny thing. There's enough warmth coming from below that it doesn't freeze. Why do my parents have a similar system? Basically, it was the same thing there, just instead of 3 wells, there was 1. And why theirs would freeze, I don't know. I don't get what was going on there. It would be really interesting to figure out the reason why the sewage system freezes in winter. Unfortunately, the house doesn't exist anymore, so all we can do is guess. That doesn't happen to me. Even during times when nobody lives in the house for more than a week in severe frost, nobody uses the sewage system, there's no constant flow of water, and nothing freezes there. The water pipes going into my house also aren't buried deep enough, but I insulated them additionally, and the water didn't freeze either. Briefly about the situation, how much snow has piled up this year. The winter is not only harsh, it's also snowy. And the snow is significantly higher than the foundation, and for a couple of weeks it was so harsh that even in apartment buildings where I live, people were left without electricity, heating and water. And to everyone responsible for this here in the Volkhov district, shame on you. And here, whether it's an advantage or a disadvantage of having your own house depends on your point of view, because in apartment buildings there are certain people responsible for the utilities. But in your own house, the way you built it is the way you have to live with it. It's like your house, your responsibility. And here it's my responsibility that on my property I didn't bury the water pipe deep enough, and well, that's my decision. But over there, outside my property where the water pipe is laid, it's also laid incorrectly. It's laid at exactly 1.20 meters, right at the frost line. But it should be laid according to the regulations. There's a standard frost depth requirement for how deep it has to be laid. And we've got some funny situations here too. There's a man who also has a house like mine, with city water supply, and his water pipe froze as well. The thing is, I don't clear the snow here on purpose, and in fact I even pile more snow here. I also pile it onto the septic tank. And snow is a very good insulator, so it prevents everything there from freezing too much. I can already predict comments like, why mention -34 in Minusinsk when it's just -7? The point is that a house should be built based on the specific region and its unique climate conditions. Because in our area, building a house designed for -70 would just be a waste of money and effort. There's no need for that. And as practice has shown, even an uninsulated house made of D300 aerated concrete can handle -34, and I don't need anything more than that. But as usual, there were some mishaps. I don't know if it's just a coincidence or somehow a result of these frosts, but something happened. So I come home, take a look in the bathroom, in the cabinet where my water heater is mounted, and I found out that the water heater, the bastard, was leaking. I put a little box right here and it's dripping here. You can see the dried drops here, and right from here it's dripping and doesn't look like it's going to stop. So much for Zanussi. I just praised this thing recently, and now the bastard, it decided to leak. Luckily it's not dripping too much. This little container is enough. There's just a bit splashing at the bottom. It's not dripping too much. I don't know, if I try to fix it, I might end up breaking it even more instead of fixing it, so for now I'm not going to mess with it. We'll see, maybe it'll get clogged up or something, I don't know. Who knows, maybe it'll fix itself. I've had times when equipment broke down on its own, then fixed itself, and seemed to work fine after that. I'm a bit disappointed because, well, the water heater is just over a year old, the warranty just expired recently, and now this happened. And, well, it's not a cheap boiler, not the cheapest one, because here it's not smart, not intelligent, it's connected through a smart socket. I specifically bought a basic boiler, and with a smart socket for 1,000 rubles, I get a smart boiler. But basically it's just a 100-liter kettle, it doesn't even show the temperature, it's just on and off. That's it doesn't have any other technology or anything else. And then you see commercials on TV saying it's technology for the future. But as it turns out, unfortunately, the technology leaves much to be desired. Drip, 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 stars from the clear Russian skies fall onto the spear. And with boilers like these, it's great when you have the opportunity to make a separate utility room, and even better if you can have a drain and a trap in the floor to let water from that utility room go outside. It was great back then. I try not to forget to shut off the water supply when I leave the house, but sometimes I have short trips, like if I'm gone for just a day I don't turn it off. And so, to avoid any mishaps, it would be good if this was done properly, not the way I did it. For 10 years, A kept saying, damn, that this is all just crap for 10 years. Someone in the comments on the previous video noted that I forgot to mention ultrasonic humidifiers leave a white residue on everything nearby. This particular model has a special cartridge inside that counteracts this white residue, but when I turned it on for the first time, everything around really got covered. All the black objects were coated with a white film. It was kind of a nightmare. I read the manual and learned the cartridge needs to soak in water for a day. After that, I used filtered water and the white residue disappeared. Everything works fine now, and nothing gets damaged.
One more small but actually quite big question.
As for the warmth in the house, even in the harshest frost, over -30, it's completely comfortable to walk around in a t-shirt and shorts thanks to the heated floors running, and there's also an additional convector. There are both theoretical and actual calculations showing that you can heat the room using only the heated floors, and you can set it up so that it's enough. I made a mistake in calculating the power, so I needed an extra kilowatt of energy, which the convector provides for me. And there was an interesting comment under one of my previous videos that this is some kind of purely Russian thing to walk around in a t-shirt and shorts when it's -30 outside, because when you go somewhere to Europe and see how they live, you see them in England, for example, wrapping themselves in fur coats by their fireplaces. It's really interesting to observe this contrast in mentality. Over there, you could easily go broke just paying the electricity bills. Even in the harshest, most extreme conditions, my electricity bill never went over 12,000 rubles in total, considering that everything here runs on electricity. A 6 kilowatt stove, a boiler, a dishwasher, and all those other appliances. Usually, it's somewhere around 10,000 rubles. In kilowatts, that's typically between 1,800 and 2,200 kilowatts per month. In the harshest conditions, it goes up to about 2,500 kilowatts. I'm also heating the first floor, which is 50 square meters. Also, I use heat for the second floor, which has the same area as the first floor. There's less volume there because of the sloped roof, but the area is the same, so basically both floors are being heated. The total floor area, if you count it, is 94 square meters. Also, thanks to the cold weather this winter, I realized why you shouldn't insist on heating your house only with underfloor heating. Why, if you want the maximum level of comfort, you should have both underfloor heating and an additional heat source that warms the air. Even with the correct underfloor heating power, say 100 watts per square meter, you'll need to set the floor temperature to around 30 degrees during such cold weather. The floor won't just be warm, it'll be hot. And that's basically not a problem, but when you're used to comfort, it will already be pushing the limits. And an additional heating source like a convector allows me to keep the underfloor heating from running constantly, so it's not hot. I keep it at around 26 to 28, somewhere in that range. And the convector is also set so that the air in my house is at 23 to 24 degrees. And everything stays within that range, it all works automatically. Basically, I don't need to press anything or switch anything. The underfloor heating controllers themselves can work not only based on the floor temperature, but also on the air temperature in the room. There are both a floor and an air temperature sensor. I spent 3 days trying everything, trying to set it up so that the underfloor heating would also work based on the air temperature. I didn't like it. You can set it up, I managed to do it, but I didn't like how it works. One of my subscribers wrote that he bought the same thermostats. He managed to set it up and he's happy with it. I managed to set it up too, but I'm not happy with it. And it's actually a really cool thing when you have a convector like the one I used last winter. It doesn't have the option to set the temperature in degrees, it just has settings like 1, 2, 3, 4. Here you just set the temperature in degrees and it works. It was inconvenient and uncomfortable before with clicking noises and a slight smell. Now I have a convector heater that works silently and doesn't bother me. Basically, you just turn it on once at the beginning of the heating season and then you can just turn it off in the summer. And if I were to build again, I wouldn't insist on heating the house only with underfloor heating. I would make other arrangements. And some radiators, they're not necessarily those old cast iron monstrosities you have to hang on the wall. Because after all, what year is it now? It's the 21st century. There are modern, beautiful heating devices. It's actually hard to put into words how to convey this idea. It's all about the feeling here. You need to live with just underfloor heating. You need to live with just radiators. You need to live in warmth. You need to live in the cold. And then you understand how it all works. And then something settles in your mind. Again, everyone is different. Some people feel warm, some feel cold. It's all very subjective. I always try to give a specific number to make it more objective, but these are just the little things in life. And actually, there's another insight I brought back from the trip. It's about how things turned out in the house exactly in that way. You come to some apartment and realize that the heating can't be adjusted. There's no ventilation, no humidifier. There's something blowing from somewhere. You open the window, it's crazy noisy outside, everything's loud, cars are honking, everything just feels off, everything just feels wrong. That's it, I mean, where did I end up? The water smells bad. If you want clean water, you can only buy it at the store. You come to the store, there's no water in the store because a ton of people like you have come here too. They bought up all the water, it's just a nightmare. You walk around thinking, God, everything's so bad. How do people live here? You get used to comfort incredibly fast. Now, after living in my own home, it's really hard for me to live anywhere else. Because even though I didn't use any super expensive solutions, everything still turned out really great. I still walk around thinking, this could have been better here, or that could have been better there. Honestly, I don't even know. Then, damn, you'd get soft and just die somewhere in a regular apartment because it's like night and day. The comfort level is totally different. The curtains don't open automatically in the morning, making it hard to get up because they're closed. Also, basically the sun doesn't really shine there, it doesn't rise above the horizon, but even so, when the curtains open, it's still a bit brighter for at least a couple of hours. Damn, I really miss that, damn it. People really do live like that. A representative from the company that made these doors I installed got in touch with me. He was asking what happened and so on. But basically the only way to solve the situation is to replace the door. There's no other way. Honestly, my mistake was not reaching out right away. I should have written to them saying that I have this issue, that this problem happened to me. Maybe you could do something about it or something like that. Because there's already rust there. It's gotten pretty bad and everything keeps corroding further. It'll last a while, whatever, doesn't really matter. The process has slowed down because now, thanks to the ventilation being on, nothing is running down it. If you don't turn off the ventilation when you take a bath, then everything is fine with the door. Nothing is running down the door anymore, everything is fine. But still, rust has already started there, the paint is peeling off, and this process continues. They didn't offer me a new door, so I'm not solving the situation in any way. I stopped caring and kept living my life. If I were to build again, I would install, well, I visited someone, saw it in person, touched it, checked it out, opened and closed a finished wooden door. It's awesome. I would put one like that in the house. Not an aluminum one with double glazing, but this finished wooden one. It's just amazing. In the end, everything is great with the house. It's already stood the test of time. It's stood up to the cold, the heat, and anything else. I'm really enjoying living here. I'll keep finishing everything inside and out. There's still a lot of work ahead for me, even with all the hassle, but man, it's so awesome. Incredible. My wife and I just enjoy the house every single day. But it's only going to get better, so subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out. See you in the next video.